Hello. Hope you're doing well. Let's talk market, shall we? Appreciate some of you reaching out and asking if I'm doing all right, which is odd. I don't know if I did something to make you guys want to do that, but it's actually been a pretty challenging month. I don't know if you can hear my voice. I'm recovering from a respiratory thing I got from helping out a family member who was struggling with that. So that's just life for you. A reminder, this newsletter, I will always deliver a newsletter at the first of the month to give you guys a heads up on how I see the market panning out. I'll always deliver that. Some months I'll send out a lot more newsletters because of how I'm receiving the information and interpreting the markets. And sometimes markets are boring and they're quiet. You don't always need to be trading. You don't always need to be investing. You don't always need to be looking at the screen. That's not healthy for you. That's not good for you. And that's not how nature works. There are times where you need to be actively engaged with your portfolio, and there are times where there are not. And there wasn't really much to update you guys with. The predictions were clear. We were going to rally into that full moon into the 23rd, and that is exactly what the market did. If you guys saw the interview that I did with Lada, I talked about how I saw a variety of birth charts with clients and the one-on-ones that I was doing throughout March and April. And I just kept seeing over and over and hearing myself say to people, you should probably take some profits at the end of May. And, it would look good for you to cash out a little bit at the end of May. Blah, 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 end of May. Right? So if I'm seeing that, and again, I have a very rare perspective, right? That's like an additional indicator to markets that is just unique to financial astrology. Hey, maybe there's a lot of things going on that point to the fact that that's a good time to take some money out. And sure enough, that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing the market chop a little bit sideways. There is some likelihood that we rally into a new all-time high here in the next couple of days, but there's also some likelihood that the rally fails from here. And the cash out profit point that I was saying at the end of May makes sense. Particularly with crypto likes to do funny things around all-time highs and tension points or pivot points, where it'll actually overshoot what people expect and then do the thing that it's actually going to do, right? And so in other words, it might even make a new all-time high here before it actually pulls back a little bit. That's kind of what I'm looking at for June. I don't think June is the exact breakout month. Again, watch that interview that I did with Lada to understand more about my thoughts on the markets. I'm really looking at July and Q3 as boom, parabola takeoff point. So there's still some time to get positioned, but really, if you've been rocking with me and reading the newsletter, you should already be positioned, right? And hopefully you took a little bit of cash out of the market because that is how money is made. You have to take profits in order to make money. Does that mean you cash out your entire position? No. Profit taking could be 1%. It could be 5%. It could be 10%, right? I think his name's Jose. Forgive me. You reached out and you mentioned how Kendu Inu, an altcoin I put on my altcoin report and I believe in the yearly report as well, has been going crazy because of some inside information I know in the birth chart that I looked at. And I just know, right? I almost even made a video about it on Twitter. I didn't release it. I might still go ahead and do that, but memes in particular, you've seen what happened with GameStop. Memes, Uranus is a revolutionary planet. And the whole GameStop narrative is about kicking back to the institutions, right? To the man, to the powers that be. Memes are kind of an FU to the system. And so that is a part of what's going on here with this Uranian energy being expanded by Jupiter. All right. So the meme market, again, I don't give financial advice. I'm not here to advise anyone to blow all their cash in memes or anything like that. But for whatever your risk appetite can handle, you might want to look at that altcoin report if you haven't got it already, and you might want to look at it before the end of June. Now, in terms of financial astrology, June 20th, I've mentioned this before, is a point in the month that I'm kind of concerned about, and it could be from things happening globally that scare markets. that might be it in terms of a final dip before we take off. All right. But June is going to be a month where we're really flirting with going to that last phase of this bull market. And if you watch the video where I laid out my ETH predictions and my Bitcoin predictions that came out in March, where I was talking about how we're going to rally and then in the eclipse we're going to drop, which we did. In that video, I talk about, I'm losing my train of thought here, actually. Maybe it'll come back to me. But I talk about how, forget it. Anyway, memes are something, if you have the risk appetite for it, you might want to look at that. All right. And now I did talk about ETH in that video. And what did we see with ETH now? The ETF is approved. So there's regulatory clarity now also too with who's going to regulate and look at digital assets now. All this institutional money now has the green light to put the money that they would like to into Ethereum. So these targets that we looked at with ETH that I mentioned in that video, you might want to look at that. I'm actually not going to speak on my opinions on which top I think is viable, but I lay out what they are in that video. I mentioned 9K, I think 11K and 15K as viable possible tops. The next target for ETH, I mentioned this in one video. I can't share too much about this or this person. But had I met with him before the last newsletter that I put out, I wouldn't have said that we could go down to as low as 52K. 57K was the bottom. And he bought there. And he has a very rare insight into the market, let's just say. There is a master algorithm that is really behind the scenes here. This is insider upon insider information here that does not leave. Don't go telling the world about this. And some of you probably will, which is why I just can't share too much. But after catching up with him, 93K is where we're headed. And that might even be the top. I'll have more conversations with him. I'll check in with him more. I hope. Of course, he's got some family stuff going on now. So every time I try to plan to work with him, it gets weird. But that's life for you. But that is where we're headed with Bitcoin. All right. And I don't give financial advice, but just watch. Just watch. All right. So the clarity is here with ETH now. All right. And I'm meeting with just a couple of updates. If I can bring him on, I have a good buddy of mine. His name is Alexander. He's one of the best in the world at Elliott wave analysis. And Bitcoin is moving into this last final wave. So I'll probably bring him on either onto the channel, either just premium for us, or I might share it with my channel in large to talk about where we think the top is. I'm going to do my financial astrology component. He's going to do Elliott wave. And it's going to be a fun conversation because he and I, we just have great conversations, and I'd love to share that with you guys. So I'm hoping to get that done this month. But what I do have scheduled and planned is I will be catching up with Jordan above waters and Lada as well this month to talk about markets. All right. But again, we have the regulatory clarity. We have all this institutional money that's been wanting to get into memes and into ETH. They now have the green light to do that. So it's pretty clear what's going to happen over the next couple of months. I'm just going to guide you on the nuance with the financial astrology. But again, things are bullish. This is the final leg up. You should already be positioned. Use the next couple of months to be taking money out of the market. I will coach you through that and remind you through that. And when the top of the top is here, obviously, I'll be ringing the alarm bells and talking about how I'm taking profits because I don't give financial advice, and whatever you choose to do at that point is what you choose to do, right? But some of the more good news is that with the approval of the ETF means and the clarity means there's going to be more approval of more ETFs, which is going to lead to increased investment, which is going to make things more bullish in the short term. Whether that's really good or not for crypto, again, watch that video with Lada for the more nuanced details with that. But in the short term, this is going to add more trust and more institutional money into the market. And there's things happening with global liquidity as well that could make this very bullish. Okay, some of you have heard of the winner's circle, the winner's peak, or the winner's curse related to the 18.6-year cycle of real estate. This could be what we're seeing with liquidity coming out of nowhere to really push the final end of this market here. So things are bullish, right? And you should be in, okay? And again, so for the short term though, June is not going to be quite the month where we take off, but we're really close. We're flirting with it. We're edging that point, and we're going to really get going in Q3. All right. So money will be accumulating into ETH. Money will be accumulating into memes. Solana, Matic, those are very bullish alts that are ready to take off. XRP is one I get asked about a lot. I might make a more in-depth video about that. XRP is triple bottoming right here. So if you have interest in that asset, it tends to pump last, you guys. So this is a place in the market, I would say, if you are interested in buying more or accumulating, this is one of the last times or last good phases or last good months to really do that. The whole story that's happening with Trump is going to pump a lot of Trump-related memes like Trump mania on Solana. Look, I'm not giving financial advice here, but just watch how some of these narratives drive markets. And again, when things go green, you want to be taking profits. You don't want to be married to memes, all right? Because they're memes. It used to be that assets were purchased based on how much money they would make. These memes don't. Look at a lot of what's happening with memes as like. The gambling industry is an 8 to 9 figure industry. So just look at crypto and some memes in that regard as well, okay? Do not be putting life savings into these things. Don't. And understand that Uranian energy is erratic and it's volatile. We are in the final phase of this bull market. So what goes up extremely will come down extremely. It will. And you can look at the charts of October and November of 2021 if you want to see what that's like. Okay? That's what happens when bubbles pop. All right? So now in the short term, like when you look at the S&P and all these all-time highs in all these different markets, there's some things that point towards weakness in the market that I've been talking about. In that interview, I even point out how, look, it's a reminder that the S&P is a rotating mechanism. So whatever assets are performing the best is where the money flows. Most of the United States economy is in the trash, you guys. We're not performing well. You need to zoom out and understand the larger scope of what's happening. And that is a large part of why I do what I do, is I don't want you guys being fooled. The market got forcefully stopped by an airborne disease in 2020, okay? And we have not had smoother running economies since. That was done by design so that certain things can be forced upon us later in a couple of years. That's the larger narrative of what's happening. Don't forget it. And I won't let you forget it. So we are not as efficient. We're not as good as an economy as we were. These all-time highs and all that, it's because of printed money. All right? So there's weakness underlying the market, and that's going to lead to a recession next year. It will. But in the meantime, there's liquidity cycles going on. We have an election cycle in the US, and part of what gets us to their end goal is you pump the market and then you take people's money away. That's just part of how people get impoverished, so that they take universal basic income and the other things that come later. I don't want that for you. That's why you're here. You're not going to get impoverished by being a part of this newsletter, because you're going to know when things are happening. You're going to cash out. You're going to know where to move your assets. That's why you're here. Now, with me, I see this short-term period as a potential bull trap for the S&P. All right. We're not going to take off in June. I don't quite see it here yet. And don't be fooled by thinking that these markets are in great shape. This is led by a concentration by a few stocks, all right? So these patterns are showing similar divergent behavior actually to 2008, where markets were screaming higher, but then eventually they crashed. So that's what we'll see next year. All right. Things are a bit overextended, so there's some caution there. There will be some, as well as you guys always see, the ranges in terms of where I feel price will move throughout the month. You guys use those in terms of swinging in and out of the market for buying and selling or taking profits. Again, do not buy and sell your entire position if you're new here and you need to hear that. Please study risk management and understand how much to put into a trade or a position or take out if you don't understand that. I'm trusting that if you're here and you're premium, you know how to do these things, because this is not as much of a hand-holding service. But I know still some people get, tempted, and that's part of how they learn. That's part of how I learned is, some of the arrogance and the hubris and wanting to learn by putting money in and actually going through the real experience. And so if that's you and you don't understand risk management well enough, please take the time to add that into your practice. If you are truly serious about making money in this market, it is something you will do. Money cannot be made in this market without understanding how to manage risk and how to take profits. So you need to ask yourself, now that I just told you that, now that I just said that, how serious are you about actually making money? If you're here for entertainment and riding the market up and down, that's fine. But if you're watching my stuff, I snap people into awareness. I can't help it. It's my joy. I like to poke and prod egos. So if you are playing an unconscious game of, I'm just going to watch the market go up and down, I'm not going to let you do that with my material. Sorry. Do you understand how to manage risk, and have you been taking some profits? If you have not, take a serious look in the mirror. Am I actually here to make money? Or is this just entertainment for me? With that, be well. One love to you guys. Peace. And we'll talk soon. I'll be more active this month. Jupiter is in Gemini. I'm a Jupiterian human being. So Gemini is chatty. It's short communication. So if you aren't following me on Twitter, I'll probably be more active on there over the next year while Jupiter's in Gemini. Not that I really recommend you guys being on social media much anyway. But why I like Twitter is you can really limit what you're seeing on there. You can create lists. So I would advise that if you're on there. But yeah, you be careful with Jupiter and Gemini, because it's really going to ramp up a lot of fake news and a lot of garbage that you shouldn't be exposed to anyway. Get outside, breathe some fresh air when they're not spraying chemtrails. You'll know the sky will be clear. And, yeah, take care of yourselves. Peace.